Welcome to AP European History with Dr. Brovkin. We continue to talk about the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte to power. And we talked about his spectacular Italian campaign of 1797. And now we will talk about Egyptian campaign, and his actual coming to power or seizure of power in 1799. So basically, after he signed peace with Austria, he becomes absolutely spectacular, popular figure in France. And this is where he shows his other talents. So far, we have seen Napoleon as a brilliant military commander. But now, when we watch his biography, what we could see, he's a great politician, something that lacked for Louis XVI and even perhaps Robespierre. So what does it mean? He actually begins to act politically. He has people who would plant articles in the Parisian newspapers. He would promote his popularity. He would be the first politician in a sense that he would cater to public opinion. He would be quite interested in what people are saying about him. He would actually manipulate public opinion. In a sense, like Twitter today, he was going to try to create a public image. Nobody ever at the 18th century tried to create a public image the way he does. So he has his connections. He tries to promote himself and not know the right people and say the right signals. And basically, within a very short time, everybody's talking about Napoleon. And that's what he wants. Everybody's talking about successes of Napoleon. So this creates a situation where the directory is scared of him. I mean, basically, the guy is so popular that the directors just don't know what to do, especially since they are not particularly, nobody knows them that much, and nobody cares about them so much. So what they do is send him what I call it mission impossible. So they send him away to Egypt just so that they could get rid of him. And amazingly, he accepts this mission and sails out with 20-something French ships across the Mediterranean to Egypt, supposedly to attack the British there. But it was much more than that. And it's quite not clear to me why he agreed to go. Maybe he just wanted to take his time to prepare for what is clear ultimate objective, to take power in Paris. But in any case, he does agree, and he's absolutely fascinated with Egypt too. And he was lucky that on the way there, Admiral Nelson's ships that were patrolling the Mediterranean missed him, just kind of missed it. And he sailed successfully and landed in Alexandria. He had with him, so it was not really a conquest in the sense, it was it was prepared to be a scientific expedition. And he had a whole lot of scientists with him. And they did establish later on Egyptology Museum and so forth in Egypt. So the purpose was both a scientific expedition to wait and see what happens in Paris, and to basically block as much as you can the British power in the Middle East. So he successfully comes to Alexandria with 20-something thousand troops, and then comes again the most spectacular thing associated with the Egyptian campaign, which is called the Battle of Pyramids. And again, Napoleon shows his brilliance, and it's one of those, one more time, absolutely brilliant battle. So he orders his troops to march across the desert, and they do, and it's hard. I mean, some of them do collapse of exhaustion, and maybe even some were lost on the way. But they appear out of nowhere around Cairo. And there's this background with the pyramids. If you were in Cairo, it's pretty much like that. It is a huge city, and then at a certain point it stops. And then there are the pyramids right at the outskirts of modern Cairo. In those days, it was, of course, a little bit more distance between the downtown and the pyramids, but they're quite close. So he comes out there, and then they are the Mamluks, the Egyptian army. The Mamluks are excellent fighters. They're known for that for centuries. So he has to confront the Mamluk army. And this is what he does, which is absolutely brilliant. He concentrates his troops in several circles. And in these circles, all around the perimeter, he puts in the guns, the cannons. And then behind the cannons, he puts the soldiers, and there are 3 in a row, and they're loading and passing the rifles. And that means that there's a continuous fire. You fire, you pass the rifle back, then the 2 other guys reload it, and he fires back, and the cannons fire, and the rifles fire, and there's a continuous wall of fire. And the Mamluks are decimated before they come anywhere close Napoleon's army. They're just wiped out on the battlefield without ever being in contact with the French army. It was this brilliant use of artillery that basically defeated the Mamluk army in a matter of hours. And then Napoleon, victorious, enters Cairo, which is a moment of glory for him. And he's greeted by the populace and he's celebrated. One of the funny things is that the Mamluks had all these harems, and so they run away, and he's invited to the harem, says, now it's yours. Now they're gone, you're going to be the master of the harem. And he doesn't know what to do with those women. And another interesting fact that I read was that a French soldier could buy himself a woman slave for a monthly wages. So his wages for a month was good enough to buy a woman slave and put it in his own harem. So they had a great time, these French soldiers over there in Cairo. He actually shows another side of his character, which would be crucial. He is not only a great commander, not only a great politician, now he shows himself as a great statesman. He actually loves government. He's beginning to study the government of Egypt. He's dreaming of glory of Alexander the Great, of marching on to conquer the rest of the Middle East. At some point, he's seriously considering accepting Islam. I mean, he has no inimical feelings to Islam. He actually says, yeah, I'm going to become a Muslim. And the only reason they say that he didn't is because you can't have wine if you're a Muslim, and so he stopped at that. But basically, is absolutely fascinated with Egypt. He loves everything he sees. He's fascinated with the Egyptian culture, with Arab culture, with Islamic culture, and there are all these scientific expeditions that are working all over the place. And one of the greatest ones is Monsieur Champollion, who is known for working with Rosetta Stone. He's the captain in Napoleon's army. He knew the languages, the Greek and the Latin, and he translated hieroglyphs, and that actually was the beginning of modern understanding of the meaning of hieroglyphs that were forgotten at that time. So another spectacular thing he does, he goes to Luxor, which is 800 kilometers to the south. I drove that distance to magnificent city of Luxor, and he takes an obelisk from there, and it is shipped. It's a huge project. They put it on barges and they ship it along the Nile, 800 kilometers, and then across the Mediterranean, and they put it in the Place de la Concorde, which decorates today the central square, the most important square in Paris, has the obelisk from Luxor. Actually, when I was in Luxor, I saw the exact same brother of this one. I mean, exact same copy. They're both identical. And so one of them is still standing in Luxor in Egypt, and the other is now in Place de la Concorde in Paris. So after some time, there's one big disaster that happens, and that is that his fleet in Alexandria is discovered by Admiral Nelson, and he just burns it. He just attacks it, just like they did attack Toulon. They attack Alexandria, and his ships are burned. He has a hard time now getting back to France because the ships are burned, and it will take a long time to build new ones or to bring other ones to rescue the army. So he should have taken a defensive position that now he has no retreat, but he feels so confident that he actually dreams of another glory, to enter Jerusalem as the kind of a final reward of his Middle Eastern adventure. And he does proceed along the coast to Acre. the place where Richard the Lionheart was in 1192. So this is an incredible moment. He has a very hard battle in Acre, and he takes, but with huge casualties, so bad that he decides not to go to Jerusalem, because if he does, he would risk his troops, and there aren't that many left. So he abandons the idea of going to Acre and returns to Cairo, and basically he's beginning to think it's time to go back, especially since he keeps his pulse on the hand of France, and he realizes that the opportune moment is coming up very soon, that the directory is weak, unpopular, that you know, it's pretty much a good time to come back as a hero from the Egyptian campaign with his obelisk, and try to claim the power. So this is what he does, and this is known as the 19th of Broom year of Napoleon Bonaparte. There's a work of Karl Marx under that title, where he gives a kind of a class analysis of what happened. And so here is what in a nutshell happened. So the time is November 1799. Napoleon is back in Paris. His brother Lucien is an influential member in the assembly, and basically the plan was that Lucien would convince the assembly majority that Napoleon should be proclaimed one of the directors. But then they actually changed it, and it was going to be not the directors, but it's going to be the consuls. And the original idea was going to be 3 consuls. By the way, the idea of a consul comes straight from the Roman Republic, that there were 2 consuls as the head of state. So they had the idea of 3 consuls, and then they turned out to make it 2, and one of them was Siège, and so he's a very smart politician who had been there in the directory from the very beginning. And I think that Napoleon made a deal with Siège, and Lucien was supposed to persuade the assembly that Napoleon should be appointed one of the consuls. And it seemed like a good plan, because he was very popular. Indeed, the people absolutely adored him already at that time. But then it just kind of ran into a hitch, a problem. And some of the delegates started shouting speeches against Napoleon. Probably there were quite a lot of monarchists there, and some other conservative ones. So very quickly, the mood of the assembly turned against him, and it looked like Lucien is losing it, like he cannot bring the assembly to proclaim Napoleon one of the three consuls. So it's at this moment that Napoleon again, shows his resolve, shows his capacity to act, totally brave decisions that could cost him his life if he loses. He loved that kind of thrill of risking everything. And that's his character. He just loved to risk everything and win. And one time it wouldn't work in Russia some years later. In any case, he brings in the Grenadiers, his most loyal avant-garde, his most loyal troops, and they burst into the assembly, and they essentially force the delegates to appoint him as a consul. So it is considered a coup d'etat, but there's the next step which makes it a revolution. Immediately after that, he actually goes to a plebiscite, which means a popular voting, and he's confirmed by absolute majority to be a consul. So he kind of goes over the heads of the elected representatives, who basically represent not the French people but the rich notables who elected them. He just goes overboard and just appeals straight to the French people, and the majority of the French people say, yes, Napoleon will love you, you're our first consul. So it's actually in everything he does, he shows innovative ways, be it in the military or in the politics or in this incident. So the fact that he was confirmed by a popular referendum absolutely, totally makes him legitimate. Because the popular vote is superior to the vote of some elected delegates on a limited franchise elections. So he is proclaimed now one of the consuls. Within half a year, he changes the title as the first consul, and basically this is the beginning of the era of Napoleon, that he is the head of France, and the spectacular era of his rule begins. So we should end at this point. Thank you very much. And don't forget to subscribe to AP European History with Dr. Brovkin.